Question. How? No, wait. 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 No, it's working. It's perfectly working. Audio mixer. Thank you. Recording levels. Maximum level. It's fantastic. So wait. Wait a second. As long as it doesn't crash, I guess. What is... There's a mosquito or other. Amazing. Fucking hate this. No. Don't say that. Something so true, movie. Now we close that. I should be speaking more intently. Doesn't happen. My bad. What am I looking for? Ah, yeah. Yeah, I remember. What the fuck? I can read this title here. It's not an issue here. It's with my family that I need to not act like I have such a... It's not like I don't have an interest. It's like, what the fuck? Why are we reading that? I don't want to explain myself. Way too much information. Way too difficult, I guess, but yeah. If you lose it, I hope you find it. I will. We shall find it. Somehow. Don't worry about it. Also, let me... Wait. I have... No. I need to mute here. Does anything change if I remove that? I don't actually know because I wasn't checking the audio before. I am amazing. I am wonderful. How will I know? How will I at all? Okay, anyway. We will test this. What do we do? Something like a ball? A pinned ball? A ping pong? No. Fuck. What? I don't know. I mean, I don't have the what? The cap on the microphone. I can have it on my mouth. Like I can add it directly on my mouth, but probably that's gonna be bad. We are not gonna do that. What do I do with this thing then if I don't have it on the microphone? What do I do with that? I hold it in my hand. I should actually microphone cap. Why? What are they? Sound dispersion and audio clarity. No. Voice quality particularly. So, whatever, I guess. I don't know. We shall test. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work. Test. The point is to try things out, to be brave enough to do something. Also, sorry, I didn't say it before. Good evening. Good. It's bad manners to say good night, but you need to have that expression. Can we institutionalize the good night expression on English? It's actually night, so why is it bad if I say yeah, good night? It's on Spanish we have buenas noches. You don't have that on English. Why do you not have that? Who arranged the language like that? Anyway, point being what? Amazing question. I don't know. Let me try to finish the thing up. Do I need something else? I don't think so. I had some stuff in mind, and I absolutely forgot. Why? Yeah, beautiful power surge, and it's. Did you read my last tweet? It says something like, when you see stuff in red, basically, when you get incredibly angry, but you pause for a second and instead of breaking something, you say, almost. But no, you don't. Basically, that's the message. It's incredibly hard. I fucking hate stuff so much sometimes. But at least here we are. The point is, even if there are, I hope there is no actual power surge, I will end up needing to add something like a tiered option, like a fourth option that is, besides internet testing, power grid testing. Fucking god, man. Anyway, let me change the image. Let me search for something else. I have many Pipimi images. This is amazing. Wait, I have this. I have a GIF. We have a GIF. Watch this. Necro. I have a Necro GIF. As in Necro, the character Necro, not anything bad. Necro from the famous Street Fighter 3. Thank you. No, Street Fighter 3 Tiered Strike. There we go. But no, go back to here. We're not ready. Yes, we can use that? Probably. It's not like it is actually copyrighted. It is copyrighted probably, but it's not like Capcom will come here and say, what the fuck are you doing? Why do you have that image there? Missing question. I wanted to inference your intellectual property by using that image particularly. This is not a joke. Now you can demand me. No. It is post-comedy. It is the so-called post-humor. Anyway. Today, we should talk about this stuff, but I don't know. I said it before. I forgot. I had a moment of anger and I forgot about everything that I have been thinking about. So I will try to figure out what is gonna be the last thing that we talk about. Probably later, not right now. In the title we have already two of them, so that's good enough for me. Anyways, good morning. No, wait. 5 seconds actually, literally. 1-0. Starting soon, DM. Amazing. Good evening. I finally heard the clip from Good Morning Vietnam. The guy that does that screams. I cannot scream. I can. It's not that I am physically incapable of, but I will probably get mauled to death if I chose to scream at this hour of the night. So I will, for the sake of my own self-preservation, not do that. So yeah, good evening. It's another windy night. I don't even know how much time passed. Like 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 1 day? How long? Some time passed since the last time that we were here. Enough to not be the same day. That's all that should matter, probably. But yeah, good evening. It's a wonderful night to be alive, I guess. What's popping? No. No, I don't know. It has been a very interesting series of days, I have to say. It is a fun experience to be alive, I guess. I can say that. It's an experience. Wait, I didn't, oh my god. Didn't change the title. It did change the title. Let me update this. Did it actually change it? It did. Why did the bot then not do it properly? What happened? whatever you say, stream elements, you're so right. Yeah. Anyways, absolutely. Anyways, point is, yeah, here we are. It has been a little bit after the last time, so yeah, I we do have an empty block node here in the notepad, in the desktop. Can happen. Give me a second. Give me a second because it actually makes me nervous. 95, there we go. So, yeah, I was trying to say. Ah, wait, I forget that when I click off, sometimes I can disappear. My bad. What a wonderful thing. When software does its function perfectly bad, no, it does whatever it can. Point being, here we are. It has been a series of days since the last one that we have in here, so yeah, it's an interesting thing to continue to be alive. I guess that's sufficient enough. That's wonderful enough already. I don't know. And as always, things have moved in some direction, I guess. In terms of, yeah, I have tried to continue thinking out anything in the most basic manner possible. I think it's quite a sad event that otherwise it doesn't really happen. That we, I personally, yes, I try to do it otherwise, but we in general do not allow those many occasions to seriously observe anything. So in the end, it's always also what a joyous thing to end up being here in, or for the sake of more than anything else, expressing things that otherwise would just remain silent, I guess. Yeah, and in that same sense, in that same direction, basically. It has been a little bit since the last time that we were here, and I don't know, many things have happened. It has been a very good sort of time to some degree, but yeah, it's it's a very wonderful thing to actually move forward with the stuff, I guess. Continue trying, continue doing things, and continue working on stuff. I wouldn't say working, I guess. In the end, it's unavoidably doing something in accordance to a project that we possess and whatnot. It shouldn't be so bad of a term to say working. It's the whole aspect of, semantically speaking. Sometimes the words that you choose to describe the things that you do can very well affect what you are doing. Like, yeah, it's not the same to say that you are pursuing a hobby than to say that you are working your soul off or something like that. Even if the action remains the same, the way in which you describe it already is influential enough to make it in some way different in that same direction. Perhaps, yeah, unavoidably, it has been a series of days of trying to continue evolving in any kind of direction. Let's say like that. Yeah. And it has been, I guess, quite a successful one. And thanks to that, unavoidably, I feel like we can continue talking about anything. It's sadly, it's not so much a normal thing, a common thing to talk about anything when there is no occurring thought. Very, very basic idea. Wow. Unsurprisingly, if nothing is going on, how can you say anything unsurprising? But yeah, it's whenever you actually give yourself the chance to think, I guess, you end up finding out that unavoidably it's not so hard, not so difficult, not so impossible to realize that, wow, we actually have many more things to say in some way, and many more things to try to think about. in that same sense, yeah. And thanks to that, it is that we end up yet in another one of these situations in which the most common thing is really just to talk, not much else. Not because the rest is impossibilitated from us. We could try to do something else, but yeah, it's sometimes it's better to go not for the low hanging fruit, but rather for the thing that might not look like the best at, at a first glance. It's quite a counterproductive activity to just pursue the first and joyful thing of, yeah, we should play all of these games. I guess I unavoidably do that to some degree already in my free time. Even I think I at some point I have talked about that here, I guess. But yeah, it's even in things like trying to study and such, it can be implemented in some way. It's like, yeah. And even more, now we shall also play something here. Wow, so amazing. No, it's good enough as it is already. It's better to have this. Once again, in many other occasions it doesn't really happen. And I am thankful for the opportunity to just enter into a far more automatic mode of thinking. It's useful, but much of the reasoning that should occur would be far more benefited from actively considering things instead of just going with the automatic response analysis, mode of understanding, mode of connecting sentences, whatever it is that happens. So, yeah, point being, we are here to continue talking about this stuff. I guess I've had some. I have, yeah, I have in many ways, as I sort of started this, continuing to study, to work on different things, to make sure that the acquisition of knowledge doesn't stop. I guess, in a way, one of the most wonderful lessons actually is that whole of, yeah, you know what? What one of the beneficial things to actually implement in life is to be capable of observing the necessity to continue educating yourself no matter which age you possess nor how much you have already tried to learn about any particular field. Not because those fields are impossible to grasp in their entirety, but rather because in many ways, one of the, in one hand, sad, in the other one, wonderful things that happens in or recent times is that, yeah, we actually have far more available information than what we can otherwise realize. And in that same sense, it happens that sadly, it's necessary to continue updating even those previous old sets of beliefs and whatnot. Otherwise, it doesn't just become a stale notion, but rather it remains way too much in the basic shape of what it gets to be at a first glance and nothing else. And things can always be developed a little bit more. It's necessary to try to do that in any one particular field of interest. It could happen. Why not let that happen, let's say? So, yeah. Point being, because of that, we end up being uttered in around the bonfire to talk about. No, we end up simply being here today to talk about some things. I started this and I tried to say it somewhat shockingly, somewhat it's sadly serious, as in it did happen. Because of that, I was thinking about the stuff, and I sort of forgot what I was actually thinking about because I had a wonderful, sudden power surge, and I was about to lose my shit, as they will say. So instead of doing either of those things, I simply the, the the consequence of calming down was also to forget what was going on to some degree, and I don't really remember everything. So instead, we have these two things. Today we are going for a different route. Today, the only two things that I can easily remember right now are conclusions and work. Today, it shall be centered around that topic, discussion, thematic, theme. It thematic, they don't use thematic on English, right? Theme, basically. It's the same word. Same word. But yeah, point being, let me drink some water. Um, Probably I should have the noise cap to the microphone. I don't like how much you could hear that. I saw that. I saw it on the audio mixer. What the fuck? Join. Anyway. What the fuck? Anyways. Wow. Wow. Absolutely wow. No. Sorry. The wow. What? Wow. Anyways, it wasn't intentional. I promise it wasn't intentional. Can I wait? If I make some minimal noise, are you going to hear it now? I can't do stuff with my hands without you realizing. Like, let me see. No, I can click. I can click and I can use my keyboard. It was just the very specific noise of me drinking for some reason. Anyway. Point being, sorry. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't. To some degree, it's the most. I don't really identify from where. I think it is just the recurring theme that has been present lately throughout the different texts that I have been reading, I guess, and also unavoidably the other aspect of. Okay, there is, in many ways, one of the most wonderful occurrences that can happen in any one field of knowledge is not only can a certain topic become a recurrent theme because we are basically almost invoking it to be such, as in, okay, we make sure that this thing is what we are centering our focus around so that we keep on learning about that. But there is also the other, unavoidably it should come as a necessary step. It should be a normalized thing for everyone. But I guess if you really don't care about what you're studying, it might also not happen just because of that. But it also has the other component of, besides the different texts that you visit, you can also think about the stuff that you're experiencing, reading out, trying to understand and such. And in that same sense, then, this thing comes forward. Conclusions. The first thing that we're gonna be talking about today is the whole being aspect of whatever is related to conclusions and whatnot. Why? Because yeah, the first thing that I can say is because yeah, I haven't between thinking and also reading out that a lot, and I guess it's in good enough of a time as ever to try and talk about that. To some degree, it also is even unsurprisingly, no? Like many other things, something not so present. Mm, we tend to have way too much of a difficulty actually mentioning and actively bringing forward useful notions with depth to them in their whole constitution and whatnot, and it's quite sad to see that something like this might even be missing entirely. So yeah, I wouldn't say from the necessity to speak about it, but rather from the desire to see what can be stated out that, yeah. So, we, I think it's from that route that we can establish that. Then, yeah, we shall as well give it a try. Unavoidably, it's quite complicated to always talk out those supposedly normalized things. I guess one of the few handful of notions, useful notions, is to understand that sometimes that which is normalized doesn't really serve its actual purpose, but rather just gets to be encapsulated in the nor- normalized place that it has been designed to, which everybody assumes it possesses, which also mystifies its existence and makes everything else harder to actually talk about in accordance or in relation to that thing. So, what's the point of this? Because yeah, something that I actually don't see happen in many ways, in many cases, is we don't really actively talk about what is the concept of concluding stuff, giving closure to things and whatnot. It's sadly one of the least active things, one of the least active discussions. In many ways, even when you, oh yeah, you always are somebody who comes from a field interested in the well-being of the people. So you must be surrounded by people that talk out that. Sadly, even then, it's not so much of a present discussion, even in the circles, if you wanna call them that, of people who worry themselves with the mental or physical or spiritual well-being of others. It doesn't really appear so much in a general sense. The easiest way to always talk about closure is, yeah, we deserve to have closure when we either separate from somebody or when we also, quote unquote, separate as in that other person dies. Those are all the types of closure that exist, and besides that, there is nothing else. And that is not only sad, but also, I will say unavoidably quite untrue. There are many more types of closure that could be, even if vaguely identified, that we could try to talk about, that we could try to mention to some degree. It's so strange to see them not at all being talked about in that sense. And it's because of that yeah, I feel like it's to some degree useful to try to bring attention to stuff of that sort. Unavoidably, it's quite a nice, strange sensation to try and think about, yeah, in many ways, beginning from the very beginning, so to speak, what we as human beings end up deserving in many cases is the capacity to finalize the chapters which we have gone through in our lives in any kind of sense, be it just a very brief period of our existence or something that took us so long that it has remarkably altered the way in which we are and the way in which we tend to behave in accordance with the rest of the world and whatnot. And that is a useful concept to possess, yeah. But at the same time, it's inside of that description already. There is an absence of we need to have that happen as much as we can. It's necessary for people to be capable of actually moving forward with this stuff. It's necessary for people to actually have the capacity to say that things are done in any kind of direction, and to finally allow things to get done. It's strange to see how much the allowance that exists towards the aspect of we don't really require any kind of closure. If it happens that we get closer on the stuff that we do, on the work that we try to create, on the projects that sometimes we embark on and what's not, then all the merrier. Everything is much better if that were to happen, but it doesn't really play the important role of either being something quite necessary or either being something that we should look forward to, try to make sure that happens. It's not something that in itself, in essence, is obligatory, so to speak. And that much already is strange. It's weird to talk about closure and not have in itself, so to speak, of it. I guess you could define it as a metacognition of, yeah. I should have, to begin with anything, I should have given myself enough closure about this understanding of an ocean so that I can actually allow myself to see it as something either useful or make my mind out of stuff, basically. Do I actually require this or not? If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. No. One of the few sad things that occurs in the current world, I guess you could define it as such, is that we do not actually say that, yeah, the more it can occur, the better. Why? The question itself is always also why. In many aspects, it's difficult to try to understand why any kind of closure would be useful. Even more, when we do things that might be good, why would it be necessary to utilize such a heavy word as closure? Oh wow, you are leaving stuff behind, you are closing a chapter in your life, you are going to become a worse person now that you did this good deed. No, it's simply that in many aspects, it's actually quite a wonderful thing to be capable of delineating and basically it is not just about separation, it's rather about the capacity to live. It's more enjoyed when things are clear. It's quite a horrible thing to live a completely blurred life, lacking any proper distinction between the things that happened and having such a chaotic mess of an existence that the moment in which we try to look back, the act of doing so only leads to the encounter with the wholeness of it without any proper thing or reference point to look at. In self that same description, therefore unavoidably, the implied message is, so, if we are capable of giving more things closer, it becomes more possible to then later on look back and see unavoidably and surprisingly that, wow, these things are in some way, shape, or form related to these other things that we are pursuing. These things are contributing to the stuff that we are trying to do otherwise, or even if it doesn't exactly contribute in any meaningful way, that I don't have to, in the back of my mind, deal with the weight of, oh yeah, perhaps this thing never ended, perhaps one day I will need to come back to this, perhaps one day I will have to do something about that thing which we all are seeing, or whatever. All of those distinctions, notions, discussions, and such, and dilemmas to some degree, if you want to use that word, is also intertwined with the aspect of, and you know what? Something very wonderful is actually the capacity to simply let things end. It's, you could very much say, even, it's very much a disparaged idea, but in a way, it actually could be a very useful method of understanding that, yeah, sadly, it's quite hard for us to talk about closure as a more general thing, as a more common occurrence, as a more natural aspect of life. If in the end, what happens nowadays is that we are terrified of, in itself, the the end with the capital T, so to speak, as in we are closer than ever to the apocalypse of things. So, how can we try to make it happen that we would allow ourselves to experience more things ending in this life if already existence itself is being threatened in its very core? No, yeah, can make sense from that perspective. Doesn't mean that it is the actual good justification for that. It's just another tool to try to think about it, another way of trying to picture in in essence the idea that yeah, certainly many excuses are there as to why that doesn't happen, whichever it is. The reality is it's quite a useful thing to actually have. It's quite a wonderful thing to actually be capable of finishing things. It's quite a sad reality to live a life in which an absence of endings is so present. It's damaging to the human efforts to not have as many things being accomplished. I I remember having used a different example. Perhaps the other one was better. I don't even remember which one it was. So let me. It's preamble of why it is a different one. Perhaps the other one was different, more capable of illustrating the idea. But yeah, in some ways, if you truly, throughout your life, continuously do stuff and never get to finish what you start, never see the necessity to get things to an end, even if they fail, it doesn't matter if they fail or not. The point is that you understand that you get to that you are capable of finishing stuff, that you're capable of beginning something, working on something, putting your effort into something, and at some point later on down the road, saying that it has been done. There is nothing else to it. There is not much more that you can add to that. It is finished. Okay. If that doesn't really naturally happen, then unavoidably throughout the process of continuously creating so many things, it will. Is it really that surprising to think that, yeah, I'm not really capable of finishing stuff? Am I truly capable of living a good life? Am I truly capable of accomplishing things? If whenever I tried to do something, I didn't even get to fail, I don't get to finish anything, how come now that I want to do something else, I will have the capacity not only to finish that, but even more to be successful at what I am pursuing? It's that other method of trying to be capable of understanding that, yeah, in some capacity, it's wonderful to have the option available to always come back to things. But on the other hand, it rather is quite a nice thing to say, yeah, you know what? This is done. This is I did this, and that's that. There is nothing else to do. It's it's a difficult conversation idea to develop. Let's say, I don't think it really happens in a more conversational manner. It's just simply an internal notion that gets created. But in that same sense, it only happens throughout the continuous process of, yeah, I can actually arrive at the realizations of this thing I value enough to admit that I am not willing to let them finish no matter what happens. I will give them a proper closure the way in which I want to give them such one, but I won't allow them to be finished until that event, those marks that I have set for them, don't get to come through. Everything else I will be willing to let go, and I will be willing to conclude at some point. And such things are difficult because sometimes, yeah, unavoidably, sort of tracing back on the example, I have not really finished much things in my life. I now have to start finishing stuff. maybe it is even too late to try to finish many other things that happened. Maybe it is not at all a good idea to try to make sure that these things reach any kind of end. Is this the way that I am going to actually go? Is this the choice that I am going to make? Is this the thing that I am going to prioritize? Isn't it actually harmful for me to do so? Isn't it actually negative for me to do so? Aren't there? I might not be capable of finishing things, but I am incredibly good at starting something, even if other people are the ones who end up taking the lead after me. I am an amazing instigator, creator, developer, beginner of things. It doesn't matter if they don't finish. I can continuously begin with the stuff, and that's it. Now I have to finish things. That's not only far more difficult as a general notion. I have not done that throughout my life in general. Now I have to do that. Isn't it way too much of a difficult request to out of nowhere have to confront that thing? Isn't it sort of unavoidably a bad request? A way too difficult, strenuous request? I don't know. It's an strange way of trying to understand it unavoidably. As I was saying, it takes way too much, way too long to actually understand how something like that operates. But in the end, it's it's better to have finished things. It doesn't really matter if they ended well or not. To be capable of bringing closure to stuff. That's why, in a way, the word even is conclusions. It's not so much the whole concept of oh yeah closure. When I began the discussion with, in many aspects, the word closure itself is not really utilized as a positive word, as a positive descriptor of any kind. If you talk about closure, you are probably talking about loss, or about death, or about similarly negative things. Therefore, unavoidably, at the very least, we have ways to associate the idea of ending things with something positive, bring things to a conclusion, bring things to a final end point, to a synthesis, make things be what they get to be in their wholeness, not leave things unfinished. Stuff of that sort, basically. And suddenly, it's something so lacking otherwise that suddenly it becomes a normalized thing. That's why I decided to also mention that suddenly it's way too much of a norm to say, yeah, doesn't matter, move on. No need to have any kind of conclusion to these things that you started. Just move on, and later on in your life you might come back to that. Sometimes it's nice to actually have the capacity to say, yeah, this is done. This is it, man. I might want to go do something else, and I might allow myself to actually say, yeah, you know what, this is it. This is it. This other thing that I was doing has concluded. I don't need to keep worrying about that. I don't need to keep trying anything in regards to that. I am free from that. And it's so strange to see it normalized. It's strange to see it also be such a predominantly normalized thing that, yeah, have as many and one unfinished businesses in your life as you want. That's actually quite a damaging. At some point, it becomes a damaging, a toxic behavior if once. I don't really want to say that it is something good. I don't really want to say to make it look like it is something nice. It actually is not just necessary, but also useful. Yeah, the whole aspect of, oh no, yeah, because closure is bad. You are only going through a painful experience if you bring closure to yourself with stuff that marked you in your life. No, it actually is nice. It's not so necessary to be dominated by the fear of the outside of, oh no, were being closer to myself, I will have to suffer so much. No, sometimes it's nice actually to know that things under is wonderful. To note that there is no more need to actually worry about something is a blessing. You know, there are many other worries in your life that will continue. So to have the capacity to remove any of them from existing is already a good enough addition to your way of experiencing a reality, if you want a more complicated way of describing it. But let me drink some water. It's because of that yeah, I think it's useful, I think it's wonderful, I think it's necessary, as I say. And I don't think it's actually at all bad, negative. The connotations with which we find ourselves surrounded with, which exist outside of our willfulness, but which are in some way present in some strange mode, existent without us not actually realizing that they are there. All of those things are in some way damaging to not understand, and it's necessary to try to let something happen in accordance to that, to let them actually actually be done. It's sometimes things being done is far more useful, or even if what has been done in itself is not good, that other things can happen because this other one has stopped, has finished, are good, are far better. It's a way of lingering that feels strange, a way of associating with things that is, that is the unavoidable present word, present throughout its substance, if you want to say it like that, is it's a toxic mode of thinking about it, of thinking out reality. Ah, yeah, it's such a wonderful thing to not have any worry about anything new because I already possess my handful of unconcluded eternal worries, unconcluded eternal time expenditures. No. Isn't it obviously sad? Isn't it obviously negative to have stuff of that sort exist? I, how come we have to talk about it as if it truly was something revolutionary in a way? It should be a more obvious realization, a more normalized idea that, yeah, sadly, you tend to ignore many things, you tend to not finish stuff, and you make yourself suffer. Simple as. But no, the other way around is what we have normalized, and the other way around is the good thing, the expected thing, not what truly serves us in any way. I feel like, but who knows what will actually change if sometimes we allowed ourselves to bring more things to a closure, you know? It's just a matter of not simply trying, but also accepting that, yeah, what a wonderful thing to let it be done. What a beautiful gift. And yeah, that's, I guess, the very same line of that. That's that out conclusions. If you wanna say it like that, I guess. Yeah. Let me try to drink some more water. But yeah. Also, is it why is it getting incredibly hot? What is the current temperature here, brother? I have no clue. It feels like it is like 28. 28 is not really that much anyway. Anyway, moving on. Moving on. The second thing is work. Why are we not talking about that? Because yeah, I haven't. Una buena vez. Let me give you the context of that. I mentioned okay. We're gonna start from the very beginning. It's gonna be an incredibly long explanation. But I also remember something that I forgot to mention when I directly alluded to its existence before, and it was like, yeah, this thing is here present, and I never at all said anything else. One of the few things that I have been reading, I have been trying to continuously do something about this, to work around this idea and to make anything, if possible, come out of that. I think there is some interesting notions there. The problem is actually understanding enough so that it can work, so to speak, in itself in any way. And yeah, I have been, one of the many readings that I have been recently doing is what's it's a book basically. It's the cause of Hitler ceremony. Who's the author? I don't remember, and it doesn't say here. Let me duplicate this because I don't want to screw up. Leonard Peikoff. Wow, yeah, that guy. But yeah, point is, throughout that whole text, you have mention of somebody who, work, philosophy, work. Who is somebody who at some point talks about work throughout philosophy? Even if he isn't really a philosopher, in many ways you end up finding him as a very influential person who was a descendant of one of the teachers of philosophy that were in themselves incredibly influential, Marx. And unavoidably, as I was saying, work is very much an associated word with this person, and also in that book, there is a whole consideration of people like him, as in there are figures. I think probably the whole Germanic tradition of philosophers is considered inside of that, between Fichte and Hegel and Marx and all of that, and having finally continued exploring stuff of that sort has led me to try and conclude some other stuff, understand a little bit more some other things that end up being associated to this notion. Yeah, I guess in this case it's not so much of a direct exploration. The other thing, if you wanna give it any kind of reasoning, it comes more out of the discourses present throughout the, I guess, therapeutic model and such of, yeah, this thing is necessary, rather, and actually useful to have. We are not capable of making them occur in our actual life because sadly we have been impeded from doing so because so and so. But this other thing has been just a conscience that I found out that I have been thinking about tangentially while doing something else entirely. So yeah, that's the text that you could have. It's is it paratext in English? I don't actually remember. I don't. And now I am curious. Yeah, it is actually the paratext. I wasn't wrong when I used that term. It's not so much the normalized terminology, but it is present. Yeah. So as I was saying, it's the paratext to what we're actually talking about, so that you can have a minimally more clear picture as to why, how the fuck did I end up back to this topic, or from where it is that it is being influenced, if you want some sort of mode of understanding it. So yeah, anyway, point being that one of the few things that I have come back to try and analyze, I have, it is such a conflicting idea in many ways to try and understand the role of work in the world. It is one of the most difficult relationships in themselves that the human possesses with a concept. It's such an strange thing. One of the, I guess, incredibly political take, controversial idea, yeah, unavoidably. Something like slavery is bad. Wow. So from that point onwards, the whole discussion of work as a more thing based on desire has become much more present. And one of the best arguments existent against any work that does not follow the desire of the person is that it is soul slavering. It is enslavement of the will of the person to be what they truly want to be and what not. And such things make it incredibly hard to actually understand. Not that they are in themselves all that solid, but it is truly strange to see how much in the common field of discussion of these things there is no solution that seems to actually win. It seems to truly be a common occurrence that, yeah, you know what? You win. You say that you are not enjoying truly the work that you are doing, therefore you are completely free to not work anymore at all in this thing that you don't enjoy. Because we are not here to enslave you to this undesired task that you are performing. We are here to simply extract the workforce available in you to occupy you in the tasks that we choose to not perform ourselves. So, in that whole relationship, there is always something strange of. And you know what? In many ways, it does feel like we have fields of exploration, fields of things available to us that we might as well completely ignore. It's not just a strange way of seeing it, but also it is quite a sad realization that sadly, more often than not, truly, we end up not having anything to work in that we truly like. One of the few things that have happened in the current times is we have made so sure that work, while on one hand is considered necessary only if you truly love what you're doing, so that you, the whole notion of if you work in what you love, you will never work one day of your life. While we have that, on the other one, we have also surrendered, sort of silently, to the notion that you will have to slave yourself away to some big corporation to stay afloat and possess enough money to pursue the rest of your hobbies and whatnot. So, in actuality, when it comes to what reality reveals, it doesn't happen that most people are actually working in anything that they like. The common state has now become one in which nothing truly occurs in accordance with what we like, and it is understandable enough. There is this other degree of an important notion of some people have to do the work that no one else wants to do. Okay, understandable. But that way of thinking about it already defines that the rest of the world might not be willing to do that. It cannot be that everybody wants to not to do almost anything. Isn't it sort of unavoidably strange to think about the present world and realize that out of nowhere nobody is truly interested in anything at all? Nobody has any devotion for things which they are passionate for? Isn't it lacking rather the occurrence of, yeah, I want to dedicate myself to this, I want to give this thing an opportunity, I want to be capable of working on this handful of aspects and whatnot? Aren't we in some ways lacking? Aren't we in some ways having not really reached a conclusion also with that idea? It would be far more useful to admit that, yeah, we are trying to work on something, but we cannot possess the capacity to do so, and therefore we end up meanwhile occupying ourselves with something lesser until we can finally reach that position, we can finally reach that self, we can finally do that thing which makes us happy, you know? And it is such a non-existent notion. It's cool to be a thing that exists silently, but in what you hear people talk about, it doesn't seem to happen. It doesn't seem to exist in that mainstream discourse, you know? That people are trying to make sure that they reach a not a distinction between a good paying soap and a soap that is good to the soul. That's what I am trying to say, that they are pursuing. They are not pursuing a soap that they like. Not everybody can like gaining millions of dollars, but for some particular reason, very few people actually like to kill other human beings, even if that implies that you will end up gaining billions of dollars because of such. So, you know, it is not so much that, yeah, no, in reality, we don't like to gain money. No, it is that there are some parts of the human being that are a little bit beyond, yeah, this thing pays well enough and or not and whatnot. Sometimes it's an strange encounter with things of that sort that end up feeling weird. Not only because it happens from that perspective of, yeah, I should work on something that I like, but also the other side of that very same phrase. There are so many other works that could not be occupied if it wasn't for those who are willing to simply do them because the rest will never do those particular occupations. Shouldn't it be a far more normalized thing to understand stuff, to be capable of seeing the necessity to work on things, to human being equals a rational machine? The what's between the many descriptions, once again between Homo sapiens and Homo erectus and Homo and all of those things, the one in which the human is the animal that makes sense out of stuff, that assigns roles significance to the world that it sees, that it experiences and whatnot. And now it is strange to think that we possess the capacity also to make sense out of what is the thing that we dedicate ourselves to. That some people, but not some people, every single one of us possesses the capacity to identify and give themselves to something that they like. Is it that crazy? Is it that strange to say, yeah, you can actually find something even completely unrelated if other people say that it is not what they like. What matters is what one is capable of feeling, particularly about their passion. Having a passion of any kind, doing something that they actually like. Is it such an astounding idea to think that, yeah, some people will benefit from having any interest at all in working? Is it that strange to think about that? I don't know. I feel like it is in some way absent. It is once again. I guess the whole aspect of that is the wonderfulness of yeah, all of these things are normalized under these other aspects and whatnot. But sadly, besides that being the case, sorry, besides that being the case, it's there is not much else really to say. Truly, we have nothing else to think about. We have nothing else to do with that. There is no necessity to find something nice. There is no necessity to find something enjoyable. There is no necessity for anything of that sort. We just live life at the mercy of the painfulness of what we are obliged to do, what we are forced, required to do to subsist. We have in the modern world, we are still in the current world, we are still subjected to the fantasy of working or not, while unavoidably those who choose to not work starve themselves to death. It should not be the case so much anymore. It should have been solved a long time ago that, yeah, we pursue those things that we have any interest for. We pursue those things that we want to accomplish something in, that we see a meaning in. Every single one of us can think out this stuff. Therefore, is it that crazy to say that, yeah, you should dedicate yourself to something that you like? Truly, it's that bad for me to say that to others? Is it that negative? I am pretty sure it's not. In essence, in its conception, something damaging to admit that, yeah, you know what? You might identify something that you have that degree of enjoyment for, that degree of pleasure being derived once you do it. And it's fine to do it, even if the rest say, no, yeah, it's not as much of a good pay. It doesn't matter sometimes. What matters is, once again, if money was the point, truly, more people would be working as literal killers, as mercenaries and such. And that sadly is not the case, at least nowadays. That is not at all what occurs in the current world. It's an strange relationship with something that, I guess, if you want to say it in a different way, has completely gotten out of hand. It shouldn't be such a difficult notion to wrap our heads around. To one of yeah, work is not something that you should absolutely hate. But who knows? Let me drink for a second. I guess one of the few ideas that I always remember when this thing gets mentioned, that always resounds at the back of my mind when somebody says, "Ah, no, yeah, but work, blah 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 blah." It's the whole aspect of sadly the hard science of the big soulless corporation has won, and now everybody's forced to do labor that they hate for the sake of simple subsisting in a capitalistic offensive system. It also is a different kind of work. It does still count as work to try to work for the things that you want. Once it was at the very, very beginning, but sometimes the words don't simply mean what we think they mean. The multiplicity of meanings available to them is what makes them far more valuable than what we can actually identify sometimes. It's possible to work for a change, to work towards the betterment of the situations that we experience. Not everything is the office work or the blue collar work or whatever. It's strange to see it all reduced to that when such a polar way of thinking about these notions. Aren't we adults? How come we're so encapsulated into most basic modes of recognition of reality with these things that seem to be so naturalized as a fundamental part of our very existence even? Oh yeah, you have to work, and this means only this handful of things. Working is only this handful of descriptions, and only if you do it between or under these conditions, you're doing it right. Everything else is wrong, everything else is a shameful thing to do, everything else is a bad thing to look forward to. It's incredibly strange, I feel like. But who knows, man? It's it's something, but it's not truly something that we control. At this point, it does feel more like it has become capable of simply controlling us, and not much else, sadly. But yeah, I don't know. I guess that will be the roundabout work. Because yeah, I said I have been thinking about it, and that's as much I have been capable of understanding, of thinking out lately. Everything else besides that is pretty much the same. But yeah, I guess that will be it. I don't know. I I'm happy. I'm happy with what we got. uh, it was a good work. Uh, the meta joke of utilizing the same board with that other meaning. But yeah, it's good. It's good. It has been a very good occasion today too. Even if it was shorter. Next time, perhaps if there are no fucking issues, I don't really know. I think until temperatures lower themselves, we are gonna still be having all of these problems, which might as well be for this next upcoming month too. So that's gonna be something. Anyways, point being, thanks for being here. We are done. As always, take care, rest, hydrate to sleep, whatever. Be a responsible, work on something, but truly in what you like, not in what you are forced to. And see you next time. And even if that doesn't happen, thank you for everything, the attention, the time, the interest, everything. Thanks. And yeah, have a very good one.